Welcome back to the Horsemanship Breakthroughs Podcast. In today's episode, we welcome Karen Rohlf back to the podcast because we have a clinic with Karen in South Australia coming up in September. So I wanted to get her back onto the podcast to talk about the clinic and, clinics in general and the Dressage Naturally kind of philosophy in general, so that we can have a little bit of a sneak peek into what we can expect in September. Now, Karen has been on the podcast before, so you can hear all about her journey in that episode. But if you haven't heard of Karen, she teaches students of all disciplines and levels from around the world and is well known for training horses with a priority on partnership, a student empowering approach to teaching, and a positive and balanced point of view. She believes in getting to the heart of our mental, emotional, and physical partnership with our horses by bringing together the best of the worlds of dressage and partnership-based training. Now, Karen is coming to Australia in September. We're all very excited. And in South Australia, she's going to be hosting a seminar-style clinic, which will dive into the key concepts, attitudes, principles, and exercises that are at the heart of doing dressage in harmony with your horse. Spectators, non-riding attendees, will feel like they are just as much a part of the learning experience as the riders, as Karen will include simulations that everyone can join. The clinic begins with an evening discussion, then 2 full days of playing with the horses and riders. Everyone in attendance will walk away with new perspectives and exercises they can apply to their own horses, regardless of what level they are. And we do have a bonus. So when you sign up as a spectator before the end of July, you will get access to a special pre-clinic virtual meeting with Karen happening in August. It will be a great way to say hello and start to get to know Karen and her way of teaching and training prior to the clinic in September. And we'll have a discussion and she'll give you some things to think about before we get into the clinic. So that is actually happening on August 22nd, 7:30 p.m. Adelaide time via Zoom. So make sure if you're interested in attending the clinic, you need to sign up before the end of July to get access to that. And it's not just for South Australians. We do have people flying from interstate and making a bit of a trip of it to come to South Australia, watch the clinic and spend some time here. So if you're interstate and you're thinking about joining us, then you are most welcome. So head on over to amaliadempsey.com/Karen Rohlf to find out more details and register. Without further ado, let's dive into today's episode with Karen Rohlf. Welcome to the Horsemanship Breakthroughs Podcast, a source for riding and training insights with the goal of helping your horse be a light, happy, and willing partner. I'm your host, Amalia Dempsey, a mainstream equestrian rider who discovered natural horsemanship and equine learning theory, and now I help riders like you achieve connection and communication with your horse so you can have more fun and fulfillment whilst prioritizing the partnership. Get more learning resources, including my free connection and communication mini course at amaliadempsey.com. Click the follow button so you don't miss an episode, and if you're enjoying the podcast, please leave me a rating and review or screenshot this episode and share on social media. I hope you enjoy the show. Welcome back to the podcast, Karen Rohlf. Thank you so much for being here again. I'm really excited for not only this episode, but also for September when you're coming to Australia and giving us some clinics. Super excited. Thank you again.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on the pod. Always happy to be here. And yeah, I'm really excited about coming to Australia again. I can't believe it.
So good. I'm actually really curious to know if you've been to Australia. I think you have been to Australia before. And what you, aside from the horses and the clinics, what do you like about Australia?
Well, actually, the first time that I went to Australia was right after I graduated university. And I had this little bit of money. I thought, I can get myself to Australia. So I just went by myself, and I knew one family there. And then I just booked these trips. So one of my favorite parts of Australia was going for a week-long camel trek in the Rainbow Desert. Okay. Somewhere in Australia. And this tour was really cool because they weren't like camels tied nose to tail. Like they were ex-racing camels and they had minds of their own. And it was only 5 of us. So, that was just awesome. It was so beautiful. And it was right after there had been some really big flooding. So there was lots of flowers and green, even though it was in like semi-desert. And anyway, so that was fun. I did the Ayers Rock thing. And, but I think, what struck me right away in Australia is just, I don't know, it just felt like the United States, but like years ago when it was like younger and friendlier, emptier.
Yes.
So it was just really easy to be there. And at that age, it was very welcoming. So it was pretty awesome. And then, it feels familiar, but just new and different too. But, just the people have been amazing every time we've gone.
So cool. I was speaking to the non-horsey husband about, you coming to Australia, and we were saying like, oh, I've never been to America, and, what are the differences and that sort of thing. And he goes, well, there's 20 million people in Australia and there's like 300 million or something in America. I don't know if they're exact, but I'm like, I can't even picture that many people. So
I know.
You're probably right in that it feels like it's a kind of like a country town here in Australia. And I don't know if you've been to Adelaide yet, but that probably would take it to a whole new level, because people say Adelaide's like a country town in a city.
Oh, that's cool, because we're gonna go after your clinic. We're gonna go to Kangaroo Island for a few days and then kind of just bop around Adelaide. I don't know. We're a little bit open-ended. So
I think you and Dana will really like Adelaide. Fingers crossed. And then you come back.
Yeah, it's easy to please us. I mean, we just love sort of just going for a drive and just kind of soaking in the vibe. And Sydney's beautiful. We love visiting Sydney. And yeah, it's just, I think Dana would be here all the time. I like being home also. But Dana has a couple times been like, I could move to Australia. Like, oh, okay. Please don't. But
yeah. You're like, I'm staying home, but
he wants to come along. Well, it's nice because he wants to come along, and just traveling is always more fun with him. So, it's nice to have him as a travel buddy that's excited to come too.
So nice. And will he be at the clinics as well, or?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And he'll be doing we'd like to video everything, so we can have it for the classroom if we get stuff. And yeah, so it's just super that he does that, because that's not a fun job sitting behind the video camera the whole time, but he's got his system down, and it's always really nice to have it in many circumstances, to be able to see it again and
definitely
share it so other people can learn from it too.
Yeah, so for those listening who won't be in Australia for those clinics, they'll be able to benefit from the lessons and the things that you teach people through the video classroom. So that's amazing. And
yeah,
you've got 2.5 days basically here at the clinic in September. What do you plan on teaching us in that time?
I don't know. No. Yeah, it was interesting because it's such a short amount of time. But I made it a little game for myself, because I've done 1-day clinics, 3-day clinics, 5-day clinics, 6-day, so I can drop in and just go teach and not have to prepare anything. But I played a little game with myself this time, and I said, all right, if I only had 2.5 days to make the biggest effect on people's horsemanship and the progress they make with a horse, what would I do? And so I kind of just played that little thought experiment and to see what I could come up with. And so I thought about, there's so many different ways to do clinics. And sometimes you have an instructor that comes and like they just play with your horse themselves, or they ride the horse, and you get something out of that for sure. But often when I see that, then the student is usually like, oh, I'll never be able to do that myself. It makes it, hard sometimes to take that home with you. And then on the other end of the spectrum is kind of how I like to teach, which is I'm really focused on empowering people, of not just do this exercise and know when I say it's good, but how do you know when it's good? And how do you know why I chose that exercise? What's the concept? Because if you know the concepts, then you can make your own decisions based on what happens, because we know, you can have plans, but your horse will do something different. So I really like to teach people to understand the thought process, understand the concept, and know how to self-assess. And then you can make these little decisions along the way that are so unique to every that's what trainers are really doing, right? We're kind of playing around. We feel the right moment. We make a decision based on that. And that's exciting to me, is not just me being able to orchestrate getting a result, but me being able to set students free to go, I get it. I'm going to play with it. And look, I just got it. I'm like, yes. That's what really lights me up. So yeah, I was like, all right, well, it's not just about exercises. It's about the concept behind the exercise. It's also about the attitude with which you play with the exercise. And then it's sort of some core principles that the exercises live in. And then there's the exercises. So that's where I was like, okay, we need concepts, attitudes, principles, and exercise. And I just wrote down the most important ones under each subject. And then I tried to whittle it down and going, okay, but if I only had to pick 4, if I only had to pick, and then I was like, and then if I only had 2.5 days to teach it. And that's how I arrived at what we're going to teach at the clinics. So I'm really excited.
Me too. Yeah. And it's a lot. It sounds like it's a lot to kind of cram into 2.5 days. And I think people are kind of wondering, like, what's the format? Like, are we going to be doing individual lessons? Are we going to be doing group sessions, simulations, theory? Like, what's actually going to be involved in terms of the logistics?
Yeah. Pretty much yes to just about everything you said there. Yeah. And that's where we're going to start with meeting the afternoon, evening. I'm not sure what time. You'll figure that out.
It'll be evening.
Okay. We'll meet the evening before. And I find like doing, an hour and a half or 2 hours the evening before, like then you have a chance to sleep on it and you can arrive already with, at that one, I'll really talk a lot about some of the concepts and principles, the things that kind of need to soak in. And so we'll have a really fun discussion there and just kind of like set the playing field. Like, here's how we're going to operate. And I think that's really important for students to be able to drop into that. I mean, a lot of them will be familiar with what I do, but I'm hoping there's a lot of people who have no idea who I am and what I do, but or maybe they're just a little curious, or someone told them and they can just like, okay, here's the playing field we're going to be playing in. Mm-hmm. And then the next 2 days we can kind of, I don't know, hit the ground running is not a good term, but I don't know if you have that expression, but because we're going to hit the ground relaxing. Yes. But then it'll be a combination of, group, we'll do some simulations. I love simulations and everybody will be able to play with these and they're super fun. So I really want to teach it kind of, I'll call it seminar style. I don't know if that's the official term, but I will be teaching to everyone who's there. And of course, I'll be teaching the people with the horses in front of me, but I'm going to be turning around just as much because I really want everybody to get it. And so some simulations that we all do, discussions, there'll be some exercises that we do with a partner. And there's going to be some things that we can do. All the horses will be out there. I mean, we'll have to, look at the space. I think the arena you have that will be at your place will be a little smaller. So we're going to change a little bit and break it into smaller groups. So I'm going to make it work. But what I really love to do and with this sort of thing is if I do a good enough job describing the principles and the concepts and giving people like, here's how it's going to go. Here's what you're looking for. Here's how you play with it. And then I want to watch them, what they do with that information. Right. So I'm very conscious about when I come in and micromanage. Right. And I'll be like, I'm going to micromanage you for a second. But because if I micromanage too much, then again, when I leave, they're like, oh my God, that feels amazing. And I leave. And then the next day they'll go out to ride the horse and they go, wait, how did we get that? Because I didn't share how I got that. So I right away from the beginning be like, here's the idea. You play with it. And I really encourage students to have a dialogue. Like, if you have a question, ask me. And just that process of realizing you have a question and being so bold as to raise your hand and go, hey, I need a question is actually a huge part of being able to like learn and progress. Yeah. So I really like to create that safe learning environment where we're trying to get this done. We're trying to see everybody where they are. And like, here's the concept and exercise that anybody at any level can use to take the next step. And I know that sounds really weird to say, really, anybody at any level? I'm like, yeah, those are the ones that I picked for this clinic. So you can take a lot of these principles and concepts and exercises and play with them for canter, walk, canter transitions, or, you know, in collection, or walk, trot transition stretching, or on a loose rein. So that's what I think is going to be super fun for the riders, but also for the people watching, because it's like, oh, that's the theme. That's the heart of it. And now how does that show up in all these different horse rider combinations that will be in front of me?
Yeah. That sounds incredible. And I think people were used to, especially here in South Australia, 2 different styles of clinic formats. The first is just individual lessons, one after the other. And the second is, you know, a whole group of people at the same time throughout the whole day. And it sounds like this is going to be a very different experience for people watching and participating. And I agree with you in that it really does need to be about empowering people to kind of own what they're doing, to have that dialogue with the horse and really understand why they're doing it. Because as you say, you can micromanage them in the lesson or the session. And then when they go away, they're like, hang on a second, it's not working now, because you're not there micromanaging. So yeah, that's really exciting for everyone. I think it's going to be very different to what people are expecting in terms of a clinic here in South Australia. And we also have a bonus pre-clinic virtual meeting for all riders and spectators coming up in August. You do need to sign up before the end of July to be eligible for that pre-clinic meeting. So that's going to be really exciting. What can we expect in that virtual meeting?
Well, I think it's really, really a cool idea. And again, it's like this other layer of deciding to show up, right? So a lot of times people, like you said, they go to a clinic, and if you're going there just to watch, you're like, okay, I'm going to sit in the chair. I'm going to watch this stuff happening out there in front of me. And taking another step to like actually engage yourself. It's like, I'm going to, you know, and so just the act of going, I'm going to sign up so I can do that Zoom meeting, and I don't know what it's going to be, but I'm going to click the button. I'm just going to be there on the screen and see what happens. Like that's, I know I'm already having an effect on the results people are going to get when they get to the clinic. So I'm trying to just give a reason to engage. It's really important for me to quickly build that safe learning environment, the rapport. For some reason, a lot of times people attending clinics are nervous. And I don't know why, because all the pressure is on me.
Yeah.
If a student is like all falling apart, like that's fine. I'm supposed to put it back together. So I'm always a little like, really? Why are you nervous? Like I'm the one that everybody's staring at. Anyway, so it's important to me to kind of have that, like, let's everybody just take a breath, get to know each other. It's all safe. You know, we're going to have fun. We're here to learn. I don't know what's going to happen because I haven't seen any of the horse and riders yet. So like nobody else has anything to worry about. And so I think if we can arrive, and I'll be giving people things to think about, right? So some of these principles and concepts that take a minute to drop in. I mean, there's some of them are really big and deep and maybe really different than people have thought about. So I'll start talking about some of that already. So it's a real advantage, not just to like get the familiarity. So when we see each other in Australia, be like, it's you. I remember you. You're the one who had the cat that walked across the screen, you know? So we'll all already be more comfortable. But some of these concepts, like I'll be able to give you guys or anybody on the call things to start watching for and thinking about and noticing and maybe playing with as they're out with their horses. So things are already going to start to change.
Yeah.
You know, just looking at something from a slightly different angle, it can give you an entirely new perspective and new information. So the power of just shifting someone's viewpoint, even 1%, can really change things to a huge degree down the road. So that will be the point of that. So, the clinic, it's not like you're missing anything if you don't come, but actually kind of you are. So the clinic stands on its own, but this is definitely a really cool bonus that I think is going to just be a really big, valuable part of the experience.
Yeah, I really like the idea because, as I've mentioned to you before, I think riders can get kind of cold feet before a clinic, like, oh, should I just pull out now because I'm a bit worried that this is going to happen, or maybe my horse isn't ready, or what if it's too much atmosphere for my horse? What if I make a fool of myself? If you're listening to this and you're relating to these kind of thoughts before a clinic, perhaps, Karen, you can give us some tips on how to negate that, how to help prepare our horses best for a clinic.
Yeah. I mean, really, your horse, if you feel like your horse is not going to be comfortable with the trip or the environment, there's some time, right? So, we have some time between right now and when the clinic is. And so I would get really specific. If there really is a concern, like, oh my God, he's never been off the property, he's never been on this horse trailer, and he's never been in an arena with more horses. Like, well, maybe we should start addressing that. So you can get specific and say, well, let me just start practicing with the trailer, or let me practice riding with some other people on purpose ahead of time, because there might be whatever alarm bells are going off. It might be real. It might be like, oh yeah, I really need to practice that. So that's great information. But as far as just oh my God, I'm not ready, please do not go crazy trying to go up 3 levels before I see you, because you're perfect exactly the way you are. Where you are now is what I will help you with. So for me, there's no way you need to be that's going to make me walk in and go, oh, you're not advanced enough. So my whole thing is like, can we meet people exactly where they are and then go, okay, what do we think we should do next? And, by design, what I'm going to teach will be appropriate for everybody, and we can play with it at different levels. So, and again, the pressure is on me. I'm here to help you and your horse. And the best thing you can do is just arrive feeling like yourself.
Yeah.
I think the important thing is that your horse is healthy and fit enough, right? So that's for sure, healthy and fit enough, and can arrive there with where you feel like you did what you could to prepare. So when you look back, even if your horse gets there and freaks out, but you tell the story, you could go, well, he's freaking out, but I did all these things to prepare.
Yeah.
And, but it still happens. And then you know what? You tell us, like, so somebody's there and they're like, oh my God, my horse is freaking out. So you come up and you ask for help and you go, Amalia, Karen, my horse is freaking out. And like, oh, okay, well, maybe we can start helping you with that there. Like, I think it's the spirit of we're all here to help each other, that no one is supposed to perform for me. If you're a diehard Dressage Naturally fan, you're not here to perform a test for me to judge. My brain doesn't even go there. And that's why I'm like, when people say that, I'm like, you're what? Like, I'm not thinking that. I'm thinking, what do I see and where can we improve? That's it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I hope that makes people feel more relaxed.
Definitely. And
I'm not going to bring a big red magic marker.
Yeah. And Karen, I feel like you're not the sort of instructor that if someone, brings up how they're feeling, maybe they're worried that their horse isn't quite comfortable. You're not going to be the sort of instructor that says, push them through it, you'll be fine. It's like, no, let's help you both in that situation. So people can take a deep breath knowing that.
Exactly. Yeah. If you're worried, if you're afraid, I'll probably ask you questions about it. Like, okay, well, what exactly, sometimes there's a reason to be afraid, and we want to know. But I can give you a little sneak peek. One of the attitudes that I have under my attitudes is the non-judgmental awareness, right? To just look at what's happening and say, well, this is happening. Not, this sucks, or this is bad, or this is good, or you're worse than that one, or you should have been. It's just like, oh, look, there's a thing. Look at that. So that's something I really do my best to practice. It's hardest to practice on myself, but I'm really good at doing it with other people, but everybody's experiencing that, right? So think of, for anybody preparing to come to the clinic with a horse, just try to extend the same grace to yourself that you would to another rider who's coming to the clinic, right? You probably wouldn't look at another rider, God, you're terrible. How do you have no business showing up? But we'll say that to ourselves, right? So I know that this happens, and that's why that's one of the attitudes that I'll be really highlighting is this, just to look at everything with a non-judgmental awareness. Look, there's a thing. That's it. Where do we go from here?
Love that. Yeah, difficult to put into practice though. Now that we've got a sneak peek of one of the attitudes, I would love to have some more sneak peeks. Maybe could you give us a little sneak peek into some of the perhaps concepts or principles or exercises?
Sure. Let's see. Which one do I want to give a sneak peek with? One of my, well, let's start with this one. So one of the concepts is to start with what you already can do. So, it's easy to be focusing on things that are not working. And it's easy to get really focused on that, especially trainers. I mean, trainers are like, all right, what's not working? What do I need to make better? What do I need to make better? And sometimes the fastest way to improve something or to progress something is to take what you already can do and make it even lighter, even yummier, even softer, even, whatever the criteria are, just try to improve and raise your standard for that. And sometimes, people want to, do something. Okay, what's the next exercise? What's the next thing I need to be trying to do? And, yeah, I know those of us are driven, and sometimes it's like, well, let me just go back and I can do all the transitions, but like, how yummy can I do the transitions? Can I really be an active neutral? So that's another, I think I picked that one because I think for people who are thinking, oh my God, I'm not ready. Don't go out and start trying to learn more stuff between now and the clinic. Just take what you can do and think, how can I take the easy things that we already can do and just be softer, be more relaxed, be more in harmony with it, be more crisp or be more whatever it is, just pick one criteria at a time and see if you can just raise your standard for that. Because what often happens is then the next thing in the progression starts automatically becoming easier to do because you're naturally prepared. So that's a really good problem solving. It's a concept, but it really helps with actual tangible decision making and problem solving. And it stops people from you promote to the level of incompetence in a business. People get promoted to their level of incompetence. So people tend to go, well, I can kind of do that and that and that. Let's go to this thing, instead of like, well, why don't we stay back here and make this even better? And then pretty soon you're building quality up higher already.
Yeah.
So there's a sneak peek concept that people can use.
Ooh, love that. And I feel like with those little sneak peeks that you've given us, that's probably piqued people's curiosity to want to come to the pre-clinic virtual meeting as well as the clinic. But one question I have for you that I'd love to know from your perspective, because obviously you've got quite a range of online programs that personally I've done and love, but I'd love to know what you think are the main differences between learning in an online setting versus a clinic situation.
Oh, online versus clinic. Well,
or maybe it's not versus, maybe it's
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think when you're there live, I mean, for the person on the horse or the people watching?
Maybe on the horse. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, always the benefit is to, even if it's not like a micromanaging individual lesson for the whole time, I mean, I'm going to be watching all the individuals, and there's something incredibly powerful just in someone going, hey, Amalia, right there. Awesome. Because a lot of times we humans are thinking, well, that felt good, but I'm not sure it was good enough. So I'm going to try a little harder. And so maybe I'll speak for myself. And sometimes someone just riding by going, oh, that's pretty. And I'm like, oh, and then I relax and then everything gets yummier. So having that moment where there's a living, breathing person who knows what you've been playing with and then sees the breakthrough and can confirm it right in that moment can be hugely powerful. And also the ability to see lots of different horses all in one place playing with the same exercise.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, okay, Karen gave the concept. She gave the instructions. Here's how it looks on a halflinger. Here's how it looks on a warm blood. Here's how it looks with a high energy horse. Here's how it looks with a low energy horse. And we can all see them right in front of us, in real time. And then when you can see different versions of horses and riders and levels playing with the same thing, you start to see, you get more comfortable going, oh, that is the concept that goes through it. Like, no, even though this looked like this and she did it at the walk and she did it at the canter, like, oh, I see what's in common with that. And then it solidifies the understanding of the concept, I hope.
Yeah, for sure. I'm looking forward to experiencing that myself. And I could relate, like when you said those sort of yes moments that you can really pick up in person. I've found that when I video myself watching back, I go, oh, that was a yes moment and I missed it. I didn't think it was good enough, but watching, I'm like, wow, that was really good. Why didn't I take that? But anyway.
I know, I do the same thing. I'm like, stop. I know I can just get it a little better.
Yeah. I'd love to know, what is your favorite thing about doing clinics?
The energy of the group, and that's probably why I, try to make it really included in the group. I love when there's a good energy of the group, and you can feel, like there'll be a rider playing with something and she's been playing with it. Maybe it's hard, and I'll be maybe working with somebody else. And then all of a sudden I hear, 40, 50 people go, oh, and then I'm like, they all saw that breakthrough. And I turn around and and it's like to feel that energy where it's supportive and people are getting it. So it comes back to that empowering thing. I think to see people relax and trust themselves and start to be free to play and experiment, not be afraid to make mistakes, and just that collaborative spirit is, it's quite addicting. And I think it's what the world needs more of right now. And it's just super fun to see horses being loved and appreciated, and people being free to play, and everybody improving, and to feel the energy of the supportive group. That when that clicks and falls into place, it's just super, super energizing for me.
I'm excited for that. And we do have a real mixed bag of people and riders attending, and some people, yes, are really familiar with your work, and others perhaps have only just heard about you. So for someone who has only just heard about you, and perhaps they're coming from like a quote unquote pure dressage background, what would you say is different about dressage naturally? I know you've sort of already touched on that, but if you had to kind of summarize it, what would you say to someone who's from that background?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest difference is the lack of the micromanaging part of the teaching, right? So I really, I love the dialogue with the person. I really emphasize that the person there's a lot of the exercises involve dialogue where I'm asking questions and they're answering in real time, and we're making sure that we're telling the horse. So it's much less militaristic. Yes. And much more like a dialogue conversation where the horse is included in that conversation. So I think that's probably the biggest difference. And then just to kind of, I know, sometimes equipment comes up with that when there's like people who've been doing natural horsemanship, and then people who've come from dressage, and they're like, okay, there's like nose bands and equipment that some people are like horrified at, and other people, And so I want to just let people know, like, I really will meet you where you are. Don't feel like you have to go run out and get some piece of equipment that you don't usually use on your horse. If there's a couple things you've had questions about, then, bring both of those and we'll see. But I like to start with where people are with what they're using. And I don't usually change that unless I feel like it's actively interfering with them trying to do the thing that we're trying to do. Right. So sometimes, people are a little surprised, like, Karen, you hate nosebands and you let that rider ride with a noseband the whole time. I'm like, yeah, but it was not over tight, and it wasn't, it wasn't cruel. It wasn't hurting the horse. And, but often by the end, if it's someone comes to me with a contact problem, and then the noseband, the way it's adjusted, is actually going different than the principle and the concept and the exercise we're trying to do. But I will talk to the rider about it, and I will let the rider decide. What do you think? Based on this logic, what do you think we should do? And then, like I said, the only time I'll veto it is if I, clearly see a saddle that is actively causing the horse pain, or it's clearly damaging, then, and again, I'll explain it to them. So it's going to be no shaming, no, judging, right? We're going to just look, and we're going to see, and we might change something. If it feels right, we might not. So I just want everybody to know that, if there's lots of different, styles, that we're going to approach everybody with non-judgmental awareness, and we're going to look at it, everything as a what is on the horse, and what are we trying to do? And is this piece of equipment working? Is it neutral, working against us, or working for us? And then we'll decide accordingly. But everybody can feel free to show up in what they think works best with their horse.
Perfect. And with our spectators, we've got quite a few coming along to watch. Do you have any tips for them in terms of how to really get the most out of watching? Because, it's easy just to sit there and kind of watch, but without really thinking about how you're going to apply it to your own situation. What would you say to spectators who, really want to get the most out of this experience?
Yeah, just to stay engaged. I promise to try to be entertaining enough that you don't fall asleep. But I would say, like, when there's the simulations, join us. Like, you'll be able to join us, and some people will be running around, some people can do it in their seat, but I would just say just join us, just give it a try. Even if it's, some of them seem really dumb, but even if it seems like, oh, that's really silly and dumb, like, just entertain it a little bit. Like, just be open-minded and play with us, and just see, let yourself experience that. And then, and if there's discussions and you have questions, to ask. So I always, go up, not sideways, right? So if you're seeing something that doesn't seem like it makes sense, instead of whispering to your neighbor, oh, that really doesn't look like it makes sense, raise your hand, and I'm really open to questions. I'm open to questions. Everybody doesn't have to agree with me, but just approach it with the spirit of helping, and the spirit of we're there for the riders. They brought their horses. I want them to have a good experience. I will protect the space for them and for everybody else. So, But with that said, I love questions, and I love discussion, and open-minded, be willing to play, and then, don't be afraid to raise your hand.
Yes. And for those wondering what a simulation is, because that's quite a new thing here in South Australia, if you haven't been to that type of clinic before, it's basically where, how would you describe it, Karen? It's where you get people involved in feeling something without a horse there, so that you can then apply it.
Right.
Yeah. What would you say?
Yeah, it's and it's some of the ones I do are like simulations or activations. I don't know. It's where you participate and do something with your own self, not and maybe with a partner or other people, but sometimes just by yourself, that will cause you to have a new awareness about your own self, or you get to experience what I'm trying to do with the horses. So one of the simulations is the main one for what I call the sweet spot protocol, is the main theme of how I affect a horse's way of moving. And there's like these 3 different dials we can turn, and we play with the horse, and we open up these conversations. So we're going to simulate that with ourselves. And here's my promise. I will improve the posture of every single person in the room. Ooh. Without ever telling anybody in particular what they need to do to improve their posture. So there's if that's intriguing. And so once we experience that as humans, then when we do it with a horse, it's like, that felt really amazing to me. So now we're approaching it, these exercises that might be hard for some horses, but we're going to do it with it, not with thinking, I'm going to make you do this hard thing, but like, come on, if you do this, you're going to feel amazing afterwards. Just come on, come with me. Let's just trust me a minute. Like, just move those haunches around, because you'll feel amazing afterwards. And you can trust that because you've already experienced it in your own body. So that's my promise. I will improve everybody's posture in the room without ever telling any one person what they should do.
I really like that. Yeah.
Oh God, I've built this up. Now I'm freaking out now. I have cold feet, Amalia. I'm not coming. It's too much pressure.
And
just kidding.
Speaking of improving posture, I suppose a lot of dressage clinics are about that. And I'm going to bring up something controversial. I know you've written a whole blog about it, which is stop trying to get your horse on the bit. Can you elaborate on why we shouldn't really be focusing on that alone, and how that applies to posture?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess when I started riding without a bit, and then sometimes even without anything on the horse's head, my neighbor, who's a dressage trainer, she would joke. She'd be like, "Oh, look, you're really getting your horse on the nose." Like if there's no bit, what do you call it? So, the idea that we're not trying to create a shape, we're trying to create a posture, and everything affects posture. Everything affects posture. And so when you think of in sort of the narrow focus of dressage, when people think, I need to get my horse round, I need him on the bit. And so we're thinking of a shape and a tool. And unfortunately, then a lot of dressage riders get stuck with contact problems, like contact issues, and are one of the leading issues that dressage riders have. So what I found when I was experimenting with not riding horses with anything on their head, and when I thought about the horse more globally, mental, emotional, physical, general well-being, general, attitude towards life, when I thought about that whole horse, I started realizing that their posture was improving and making the dressage easier. So for me, the holistic view of the posture. And then if we want the horse round, the neck of the horse is really a reflection of what the body's doing. And I found when I got the body really aligned and imbalanced, the neck gets almost all the way there itself. And whatever it doesn't, you can make tiny little adjustments that make it easier to get that last little bit. And then the horse ends up, if there's reins there, they meet the reins and they look in the right posture. But I wasn't created by the bit. It wasn't created by the reins. And the thing is that that's not abnormal. That's what dressage says it's supposed to be. We're supposed to ride the horse from back to front. But unfortunately, that gets translated a lot to drive and hold. But I work my horses from back to front, meaning I'm thinking about where their legs are. I'm thinking about, the body of the horse. And then the last thing that I get precise about is the front. And then it's much easier and there's much fewer contact problems. So it's sort of taking that global view, and it might sound like, whatever. But if you think of the analogy of if I was, if somebody was going to take me to ballet lessons and I really didn't want to go, and I was like a little bit tired and hungry, and I hated the teacher and I found it boring. And I was like, okay, everybody embody, pretend you're playing somebody who's bored, resentful, doesn't want to go, maybe a little bit untrusting and fearful. And how are you sitting now? And now take that body and try to put it in the right place. Somebody strapped your chin down and then put another strap to poke your shoulders back. And then you're still slumping, so they poked you in the ribs. Okay, I could get my body all in the right place. And Mellie's laughing because she can see the video of this. So I'm in the right posture, right? So, but it's not, you can tell it's not real. And if you take any of those straps and pokey things away, I'm going to just slump right back, and I'm probably going to be worse now because now I'm really pissed off. So I'm exaggerating, right? That doesn't mean I think that's how all dressage is done. I'm exaggerating. But then you take someone and you go, hey, Karen, want to go play with some dogs and puppies? And I'm like, yeah. And then my posture just immediately improved. Yeah. And now if you said, oh, can you move your neck just 1 degree and your shoulder, use your rhomboid? I'm like, oh, sure. No problem. That's a small change. Yeah. So yeah, it's the idea of just not starting with feeling like I need my horse on the vertical and now I need to keep going. And it's, that's one of those concepts that even at very high refined levels, if you're still thinking the contact, that the posture is created by the contact, that can cause a lot of problems, And I've helped, Grand Prix rider with their Grand Prix horse who is leaning on the bit in their canter pirouettes, and she wanted more self-carriage. And I started with just asking him to halt and stand still on a long rein, which drive him crazy. But, that once we got that and we thought about the mental emotional state of the horse and his understanding and self-carriage, then after we did that for a while, then I was like, okay, now pick up the reins and do your canter pirouette. And I was like, oh, he's not leaning on the contact. He's not right. So whenever I see contact issues, I dial right back and I think, well, what are the other things that have to come before that? Let's address those. And then when we do, we'll see if there's still a contact issue.
Yeah.
That was got a little bit babbling, but
no,
that makes sense.
Yeah. Everything you said in response to that question, I feel like if you're listening to this, pause, rewind, listen again, because I feel like it really,
I know there's a lot there.
There's a lot there, but I think it's really important because this is the way that I would like to see dressage change for the mainstream, in the future. Like, it would be amazing to see people playing with posture more without relying on the reins, instead of thinking that it's all about the contact and manipulating the head and neck into a certain shape and kind of faking it. So I'm really excited to see how we can all put that into practice in the clinic in September. Do you have any other thoughts or advice or tips or anything that you want to share for people coming to the clinic or anyone attending a Dressage Naturally clinic in the future, before we wrap up today's show?
Oh, I think we've said it all. I think that I'll just share my favorite quote. So I think that just will sum everything up, is to never underestimate the possibility for things to improve in ways you cannot yet imagine. And, just come with an open mind and an open heart and ready to just, see what we see and play together. And I think there's going to be some really fun and valuable things that you'll get out of it. And I enjoy meeting everybody.
So exciting. And remember, for anyone listening, that you need to sign up before the end of July if you want to get access to that pre-clinic virtual meeting happening in August. So just head to my website and I will put a link in the show notes for you to register. So very excited to see everyone there in August at the pre-clinic meeting and also in September at Cromwell Park. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast again today, Karen. It's been great speaking with you again. And yeah, so excited.
Well, I thank you. And I just wanted to give you another thank you for just raising your hand to host these clinics. From so far away, I could not do this without an amazing local host. And you just raised your hand and are making it happen. And I just really, really, really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Horsemanship Breakthroughs podcast. Make sure you hit the follow button so you get notified every time a new episode is released. And if you've learned even just one small thing from today's show, I would really appreciate if you could leave a review on Apple Podcasts or screenshot this episode and share it on social media. You can connect with me on Instagram at Amalia_horses or my website amaliadempsey.com, where you can find free resources to help you on your horsemanship journey. That's all for today. Thanks for being here. Remember to train with kindness and ride with excellence, and I'll see you in the next